Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have a very special episode today. I'm with Malcolm Beasley, who's the CEO and founder of PCI Medical, and with Dr. Gary Marshall, who is a professor of pediatrics at the University of Louisville School of Medicine, and he's a leading authority on vaccines. So, how is everybody today?
Doing
Doing
well.
good.
Awesome, awesome. We got a big interview ahead of us, so let's jump in. Going to start with Dr. Marshall. So, Dr. Marshall, you're the author of the Vaccine Handbook and a leading voice in vaccine education. Can you tell us a little bit about the current state of vaccine information and why education is so critical right now?
No, I would love to. So, Dario, I want to put this whole conversation into perspective. Our children don't get polio. They don't live in their lives out in iron lungs. They're not hospitalized with life-threatening complications of chickenpox. Babies aren't born deaf and blind because their mothers got rubella during their pregnancies. We hardly see infants being admitted anymore for rotavirus, and bacterial meningitis has become a rare thing in children. All of these benefits to children, to families, to communities, even the benefits to the economy have come from the routine childhood immunization schedule. And all of these benefits could disappear because parents and providers are continually exposed to a barrage of misinformation, or worse yet, disinformation regarding how effective the vaccines are, how safe they are, and why they're important. And so the only way to really counter this assault is with straightforward, evidence-based, scientifically grounded information that's presented in a way that people can understand.
Absolutely. So, about the vaccine handbook, Dr. Marshall, tell us a little bit about, the genesis of it and how it addresses practical HCP questions.
So the vaccine handbook, otherwise known as the Purple Book, because it's purple, was conceived in the early 2000s. The first edition came out in 2004. And that was at a time when the childhood schedule was expanding to meet needs in terms of public health and childhood diseases that were unmet. But at the same time, there was a modern wave of vaccine hesitancy that was spreading. And so we felt that it was an ideal time to create a resource like this. And just to put, again, this in perspective, 1982, kids got one series of shots, the DTP. They got one oral vaccine, the polio. They got one other shot, which was the MMR. And that was it. And that was before school entry. And so there were 7 diseases that we could prevent. When the vaccine handbook was first published, children were receiving 7 separate shots, and there were about 13 diseases that were being prevented by the routine schedule. And now there are 18 different serious diseases that are prevented by the childhood schedule. And so with this exponential growth in vaccine practice, there was a need to put it all together in a way that people can understand and use it as a basis, not just for education, but for communication.
Gotcha.
It's a very complicated topic and it's expansive. And to distill it down into simple, concise, practical, accessible, actionable information is not easy. I mean, as it is, and Malcolm, it's 600 pages as it is. And
It's almost 700 pages.
and that's concise.
Right.
But if I had to sort of summarize what this book is about, it's not a textbook, and it's also not wonky official gobbledygook.
Yeah.
It's written for the physician in the exam room, for the nursing student in the classroom, and for parents and patients who are interested in the topic.
Excellent, excellent. So, Malcolm, from your perspective, working with medical education, what are the biggest challenges that you see in getting vaccine information to healthcare providers?
So I would say that, HCPs need specific answers to questions about vaccine administration that come up while they're seeing the patients. And HCPs need real-time authoritative reference like the vaccine handbook that provides them with clinical guidance when they need it. So the challenge is to deliver the information needed in a readily accessible format.
Gotcha. And how does vaccine education differ from other therapeutic areas that you've worked in?
Well, I would say it's the only therapeutic area where there's active misinformation toward the patients.
Right.
So accordingly, HCPs need guidance on addressing patient concerns about vaccines. And it's also different in from other therapeutic areas as with vaccines, you're preventing a disease, which many HCPs may have seen very little of, particularly the younger ones.
Right,
And
right.
Dario, I would add a couple of things. One is it's one of the few therapeutic areas where there has been official accepted guidance in terms of what needs to happen. And that's been in the form of the CDC and Academy of Pediatrics and AAFP recommendations for here's the vaccines that children should be getting, and adults should be getting during their lifetimes. And that's, I think, Malcolm, you'd agree, kind of different from, how statins are recommended and that sort of thing. At the same time, we're at a crossroads in that very area because, as you know, things are changing in terms of the types of guidance that may be coming from CDC and the relative importance of the professional societies versus the federal government.
Right.
And so I think it's even more important now to have this type of resource. I would add just a couple other things,
Sure.
have been in the trenches. Providers are just simply put, completely overwhelmed.
Wow.
There is more pressure than ever to see more patients.
Yeah.
Those patients have more questions. They are seeing things on the internet that they
Yeah.
can't differentiate true from not true.
Yeah.
And the providers have less and less time to address those issues in the exam room.
Right.
And on top of all of that, new vaccines are being introduced, like the RSV vaccine for adults and the monoclonal antibodies for infants. And all of this is coming together
Right.
at the same time.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So that's a good segue, Dr. Marshall. So, vaccine information has traditionally been associated with pediatrics. How has this changed with the expanding portfolio into adult vaccines?
Well, so there's a reason that it's focused on children historically, and that's because children are vulnerable to many highly contagious and potentially devastating diseases like measles. And so the low-hanging fruit for decades has been the vaccines that protect children. And we're not done with that, by the way. There are still diseases that we need to prevent. But we've also been able to move further into the life cycle because there are diseases that adults are susceptible to. And, as people get older,
Yep.
they accumulate comorbidities.
Right.
And so they develop, chronic lung disease or hypertension or, renal disease and heart disease. And these things make them more vulnerable to these infectious diseases. So there's been a new focus on how do we protect adults. And examples of that are the pneumococcal vaccines, the shingles vaccine, COVID, flu, and RSV.
Right. Fascinating. So, Malcolm, what educational strategies work best for helping HCPs transition from pediatric focus to lifespan vaccination?
Yeah, so with the expansion of the available adult vaccines, more specialties are involved in vaccine administration than had previously been the case, and there's a need to educate specialties outside of pediatrics on the new adult vaccines, and that this takes the form from disease burden, why they should vaccinate, to vaccine efficacy, how effective are the vaccines, and any contraindications for administration.
Right. Makes sense. So, what type of vaccine information do healthcare providers need most in today's practice? Dr. Marshall, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I think they need four things. They need to understand what these diseases are like. Most of the providers today have not seen these diseases. I saw measles. I saw cases of pertussis, etc. Meningitis, like Hib meningitis. That's one reason I went into infectious diseases, because when I was in training, that was 1 in 200 children had invasive Hib
Wow.
disease.
Wow.
And now it's unheard of. My students and residents don't even know what it is.
Right.
So they need to understand, what are the diseases, what were they like, how serious they were. The second thing is they need to understand the data supporting the effectiveness and safety of the vaccines and the impact that the vaccines have had at the population level.
Yep.
The third thing is they need to know how to communicate about vaccines. And we actually have a chapter in the book, which is the largest chapter in the book, called Addressing Concerns about Vaccines. And this is all about, how do we communicate to these parents and patients who are worried by what they hear.
Right.
And then the fourth thing is, all of this has to come from a trusted source.
Right.
And I would hope that after 20 some years, the Purple Book is considered a trusted source of information.
Right, right. So question for both of you now. I mean, again, this seems like the vaccine handbook has been this living guide that you've worked on together. Tell us a little bit about how you work together. So Dr. Marshall, as obviously the clinical expert, and Malcolm, you bring the training expertise. How have you worked together to bring this resource to life?
Well, so the vaccine handbook is now in its 12th edition, and for the last 20 years, it's provided HCPs with authoritative answers to clinical questions and on vaccines and their administration. And Dr. Marshall is the sole author and has been the driving force behind it. That, just to give you some information on the vaccine handbook, can be delivered in as a print book with a companion ebook with the ability to download a PDF of the book. It can also be delivered as an ebook only. And we've also created the vaccine handbook as an app. It's called the Vaccine Handbook app, for delivery in iOS and Android formats. And Dr. Marshall's been a key driver of that as well, in terms of the creation of that. And we've worked with Dr. Marshall on a vaccine clinical insight video series, which are 5 to 7 minute videos on key topics such as vaccine hesitancy. And we've also created interactive digital learning hubs focused on specific educational needs, such as bringing HCPs up to speed on the new RSV vaccines. And these digital learning hubs combine didactic information with video presentations from Dr. Marshall. And we're currently working together on an AI Q&A chat box that can answer clinical questions on vaccine with a high level of accuracy, and based on the content from the vaccine handbook. And we're intimately involved with Dr. Marshall in the creation of all these resources.
Great. Dr. Marshall, what about from your perspective, working with somebody like Malcolm to bring your expertise to life?
Sure. Well, so it's been really an incredible partnership. I speak to Malcolm very frequently. We have Zoom meetings frequently. We're constantly going back and forth by email in terms of new ideas, new thoughts with respect to content and format of the book. Malcolm's people that are involved in the production of the book are wonderful to work with. And we just pretty much have an open channel continuously. From my perspective as an author, I after the first edition actually had multiple, I was the main editor, but there were multiple other authors. And after that first edition, I decided that this is just, for purposes of making it a seamless whole, it was easier for me to maintain and update the content myself. And that's why I took that on. And it's a daily, literally a daily process. So every time something new happens, a new paper is published that is a sentinel event in terms of the data, or every time a new recommendation is made, or a new vaccine is licensed, or an old vaccine is updated in terms of its indications, I try to put that information in real time into a working version of the next edition of the book. And Malcolm and I keep in touch closely about how that's going to play out. Do we need to add a new chapter or take away an old chapter? How are we going to fit all this in into 600 and some pages? So it's really been a fantastic working partnership, and including exchange. I'm not a marketing person. I'm not the business person, but Malcolm has, we've had very productive back and forth conversations about those aspects of the book.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. Let's talk a little bit now about collaboration with medical societies. So, Dr. Marshall, tell us a little bit about some of the partnerships that you're involved with and how sort of, whatever you I guess, learn or interact with each other.
Well, absolutely. So I guess there are two main kind of schools of partnerships. One of which is industry, and the other are professional societies. The vaccine enterprise in this country is very dependent on pharma for doing much of the research, developing the vaccines, testing them, ensuring their safety, et cetera. And so we have partnered with them, and I personally have partnered with them to make sure that we have the most accurate and up-to-date information. But then there's also professional societies such as the Immunization Action Coalition, which is now called immunize.org. They're based out of Minneapolis, and they are really the premier clearinghouse for vaccine information and recommendations in the United States. And for a number of years, they sponsored the book and disseminated it.
Gotcha.
And then for the last few years, it's been the Pediatric Infectious Diseases Society, which has made the book an important component of their comprehensive vaccine education program. This is the largest professional society of pediatric infectious disease specialists in the world. And they really have embraced the Purple Book as speaking, for what they represent.
Excellent, excellent. So, Malcolm, how do these partnerships enhance educational reach and credibility?
Well, just as Dr. Marshall said, the Vaccine Handbook has become kind of a flagship resource for the Pediatric Infectious Disease Society, which is wholly consistent with their educational mission. And so what the Vaccine Handbook to the Pediatric Infectious Disease Society has also served as a way for them to promote the society, which is, it's another benefit for them. And so our collaboration with them and other medical societies tends to enhance the perceived credibility of the resource created. And also it allows us to disseminate to their community, which allows us to reach a very important audience.
Right.
Including the trainees. And I think this is a key point to make, which is younger physicians, nurse practitioners, providers who are in training, again, not exposed to the diseases, but exposed to lots of misinformation. They themselves don't have the kind of confidence in vaccine practice that we had when we were coming out. And so it's really important to get to them at a point in their training where they can internalize the importance of vaccination. And so PIDS has really been focused on getting this into the hands of trainees as well.
Great. Great. So let's talk a little bit about vaccine hesitancy. I know that's been a popular topic here, for better or for worse. Dr. Marshall, what are some ways that you see to help counteract vaccine hesitancy?
So it's interesting that you say for better or for worse, because it's mostly for worse.
Yeah.
But there is kind of a for better part of it. And that is that people should critically look at what they do with their children in terms of medical procedures and medical interventions. And they should look critically for themselves when they're adults. So, that's the for better part of it. But the for worse part of it is that people who otherwise really are well-meaning, but don't have the background in terms of understanding the science or understanding how studies are done and that sort of thing, they're very vulnerable to what they read and what they hear, and that can just put them in a place where they really aren't sure what to do. And if anything, they sometimes default to the null, and the null is let's just leave things alone.
Right.
My kid's healthy now. Why mess with it? Right.
Yeah.
And so that's really the sad part about this, because no parent wants their kid to be harmed.
Right.
And those poor parents whose kids died of measles in the recent outbreak, they didn't want their kids to die of measles. They just had been come to some misunderstanding that the vaccine is worse than actually the disease. So how do we deal with all of this? How much time do you have?
Keep going.
Keep going. We're good.
I think, look, I'd like to just kind of just distill it down to a few points.
Sure.
We need providers to have the evidence-based talking points.
Yeah.
But we can't have providers get into a further and further down the rabbit hole of point counterpoint, because it's not really very productive. We need to teach people, providers, how to listen carefully to what people are saying and what they're asking. They need the talking points on how to address those concerns succinctly. But the most important thing is that the providers need to gain the trust of the parents and the patients. I keep thinking back to Marcus Welby, which I don't know, Dario, if you know.
Yeah, I remember Marcus Welby.
Marcus Welby was the quintessential family doctor in a small town, and everybody loved him, and he loved you, and he loved your kids, and you just trusted what he said. And I think that most pediatricians will tell parents, I think your child should be vaccinated.
Right. Wow. Well, this has been just a fabulous interview.
And Dario, let me just say one more point on that. One of and this is one of the things that we do in our information outreach. One of the most important things is to educate and emphasize to HCP that their recommendation carries the most weight with patients and parents. So what they say to the patient at the time of the meeting is the most important thing. So we want to make sure and emphasize that. And then as Dr. Marshall says, we want to equip them with information and tools they need to counter vaccine hesitancy. And that can take, the forms of all the different resources we've talked about, as well as potentially like quick reference card as addressing common concerns, which can be another valuable tool.
Great. Yeah, just an excellent interview. Just in closing, Dr. Marshall, anything that you'd like to leave the audience with? I mean, you made a great point earlier, but final points.
Yeah. Oh, before I do the final points, I just want to add one thing to the AI discussion.
Sure.
I'm not a very sophisticated technology person, but I look at AI as kind of a really, really good search engine that can cull information and summarize it in response to a particular question. But it all depends on the source material. And I have trouble with AI answers that are culled from the entire universe of whatever you call it, the cybersphere.
Yeah.
What Malcolm and I are working on is an AI assistant that uses the vaccine handbook as the source.
Right.
And so we hopefully there it's beginning with a body of trusted information, and we don't have to sort through all of that.
Excellent.
In terms of the key takeaways, I started medical school in 1979, and in my own medical lifetime, we have made unbelievable progress in preventing infectious diseases through vaccination. And as I sit here now in 2025, I am very concerned that we are actually going backwards. And my message is that we can't give up. To paraphrase Neil Young from the famous song, we may be finally on our own.
Right.
And what I mean by that is that we may have to rely more on our professional societies and trusted sources than we can on other sources, such as the current configuration of the ACIP and the DHHS.
Right.
And so we hope that the Purple Book can be a resource for people navigating through this really treacherous water that we have right now.
Gotcha. Wow. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Dario, just to wrap up on Warren, I mean, we're seeking opportunities to disseminate the vaccine handbook, the Purple Book, to integrated delivery networks, medical platforms, and working with pharma. And we're also can create custom resources to address, specific educational needs. And we'd certainly love to talk to your audience here.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Marshall, I just want to congratulate you on all the contribution that you've made to this area of society, and all the best of success going forward. I know, to your point, I mean, the battle's not finished, right? So just got to keep soldiering on. And Malcolm, the work that you do is really spectacular as well in terms of taking that, insight and packaging it in a way that makes for a great learning experience. So thank you, both of you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dario.